Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool Squad Talk episode on Football Talk podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. This is the big one, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot of rumors this summer surrounding potential incomings and outgoings at Liverpool, especially with regards to attackers. So it's only right that we analyze our current crop of players, plus we can see what potential targets uh, could be sort of identified for this upcoming transfer window. So sit back and relax as there's a lot of players to discuss during the show. So let's begin with our current crop of attackers. As you can see, six-man attack there in Salah, Chiesa, Gakpo, Jota, Núñez, and Díaz. And probably for the first time, I'm actually not sure who is going to be at the club next season, which is very bizarre to say out loud because we're on the verge of winning the league. So you're expecting the team to be sort of a mainstay squad, and you're expecting one or two or three additions to strengthen the depth of the squad. But it appears to be that this could be a sort of another rebuild for Liverpool this summer. Obviously, time will tell. But if you believe the rumours, uh, a lot of players seem to be set to depart. There's a lot of players that are potentially incoming as well. So it's going to be a big summer for all of us. Now, let's go through each player and then see what the future holds in terms of their position for next season. So, Mohamed Salah, as we all know, um, thankfully signed a new contract extension, which is, of course, big news for all of us. So, pretty much he will be at Liverpool next season, which, is a slight sigh of relief because I don't think I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, I wasn't 100% sure if he was going to stay. But I'm very pleased that he is. So Salah will be playing at Liverpool next season. Chiesa, it's a bit up in the air. I think it's safe to say that he hasn't hit the ground running as expected. It felt like he was more of a opportunistic signing where he was available for a very affordable fee of £10 million plus a couple millions in add-ons. Of course, he hasn't played that much this season due to injuries and possibly not fully adapting to the intensity of the Premier League. So it's still quite up in the air in terms of what the future holds for Chiesa. A lot of fans suggest that he wasn't an Arne Slot signing, which if you look at the number of times that he's been selected, it may suggest that because he doesn't seem to have a lot of faith in Chiesa. Of course, Chiesa came on in the Carabao Cup final and scored in the latter stages, and that's probably been one of his highlights of the season. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with him. If I would like to see Chiesa play another season, if I'm being brutally honest, I feel like he's a player with great quality, but at the same time, he's not really going to displace anyone from the starting lineup, in my opinion. So who knows? But his future for me is a bit of a question mark. I don't know if he'll be here next season or not. In terms of Gakpo, I can say with some certainty that he will be a player at Liverpool next season. Probably been one of our most consistent performers over the course of this season. Of course, in the last 2 or 3 months, he's picked up a few injuries, so he's not been able to claim a regular spot in the team. But his numbers have been proof that he has finally found a home in that left wing position, which really shouldn't be a surprise, as that is his natural position. But under Jurgen Klopp, he played as a false nine, so he had to kind of find his rhythm and find his place in the team. I think the left wing position is pretty much his. I think he cements it as his role. I think he's a starting left winger for us, regardless if Diaz is at the club or not. So for me, Gakpo and Salah are definitely mainstays. The other players, yeah, it's not as clear cut as it may appear. Jota, fantastic football, of course, great finisher, but unfortunately, very, very injury prone and has been for the last few years. So is that a player that you want to keep in a squad? In my opinion, I feel like he's a player that you could have on the bench and you know cover the sort of the starting number 9. But even saying that out loud, even if he's not playing every game, he may still not be available. He might pick up an injury during training, and that keeps him out for a number of weeks. So, availability is a very sort of key trait to have in the modern game. And I feel like with Jota, there is a question mark there. And because he's such a talented player, if we were to sort of part ways with him, he will generate interest from a lot of clubs uh, due to his sheer quality. And I feel like we could get a decent amount for him. Would I like to see Jota sold? Probably not, if I'm being honest, because I do rate him very, very highly. But at the same time, it depends on Arne Slot. Does he want to, you know, take that gamble to have him again next season with no guarantee that he'll be able to stay fit? It's a huge ask. So it also depends in terms of who we recruit this summer. If we were to sign more young, up and coming players, then I think Diogo Jota may end up staying for at least another season. I think his experience will be key in that aspect. And that goes on to the next player, Darwin Núñez, who I feel like is pretty much certain to leave Liverpool this summer. I think he's pretty much got one foot on the door right now. Hasn't lived up to the potential, the hype over the last 2, 3 years. I think under Arne Slot, we were expecting him to really start firing because we feel like under Jurgen Klopp, maybe due to the sort of the intensity that we play, maybe it didn't suit his game, even though we call him Mr. Chaos. But under Arne Slot, we thought as we play with more calm and sort of composure in our sort of build-up play, it should feed well to play to Núñez's game where he's on the shoulder and he can lead the lineup. So unfortunately, he hasn't really delivered. I think the issue is his finishing, which is crazy to say 'cause he's the striker, but I don't feel like he's of the highest standards. And it doesn't matter what style of play the team presents. He's not the high quality finisher that I think Liverpool need going forward. So I think he is pretty much destined to leave. Of course, there was very strong rumors in January that he was set to leave and join a team in Saudi. I think it was Al Hilal, but I'm not sure uh, if. Well, you never know. I think that move could still be on the cards. Um, there is interest from Spain in terms of Atletico Madrid, so he's definitely a player that will generate interest, and I do feel like he could be successful elsewhere, but just probably not in the Premier League, in my opinion. So I think this will be a season where Darwin Núñez does part ways with Liverpool. Luis Diaz. Now, in terms of his season, I think he's had a decent season. Some fans may disagree and say that um, he's had a purple patch where he scored an abundance of goals, but after that hasn't scored, I think, in about 15 games or something to that nature. So for me, I do feel like the output could be improved in terms of the ratio, but at the same time, I do believe that he's a player that gives his all, and he can sort of have an impact, even if he's not having a direct assist or direct goal. He does help in terms of the way we play. He definitely attacks that byline very well. Has shown a different level of his game where he's played as a false nine, which I feel like it's definitely a different sort of weaponry that we have in our team now. Before we pretty much categorized Luis Diaz as just a left winger, maybe occasionally he can play on the right, but I never thought he could play through the middle, and he's shown that he does have that capability. Of course, it does depend who the opposition is because in certain games, I don't feel like it suits to have Luis Diaz up against a team that has physical centre backs, in my opinion. So, in terms of his performance this season, I don't think that's the reason why his future is in question. It's more so with his contractual situation where I think they've been negotiating a contract extension. Don't seem to be on the same page in terms of salary and probably bonuses and all that sort of stuff. And there's always been strong lingering interest from Barcelona, and I think there's other teams that are looking at him. I think there's a team in Saudi that are showing interest as well. So he could be on the verge of leaving this summer as well. So what we'll do today, we'll highlight or analyze potential targets for the left wing, right wing, and striker roles, and we'll see who's available, who I think could be, the right fit for the club. And then I'll give you my verdict in terms of what I think could happen this summer. So yeah, let's move on and let's go through left winger. So we'll start with that. And the first left winger is Nico Williams. So no sort of surprise in terms of having him listed on the show. In terms of his stats this season, he's played 39 games in all comps, 9 goals and 7 assists. Not, you know, big numbers there because he had a fantastic Euros for Spain and definitely lit up that competition. So we expect him, for him to continue that form going into La Liga and his club form. But I don't think he's pretty much produced that kind of form. Whereas if you look at his counterpart in Lamine Yamal, he's been sensational since um, playing for Spain in the Euros last year. So for me, very talented player, predominantly a left winger that can play on the right side very comfortably. Very good in terms of one-on-one situations. Can chip in with the goals. Has a release clause, which Liverpool do love to activate at times. The fee, I believe, is around 48.5 million pounds. So definitely something that uh, is realistic for Liverpool. However, a stumbling block could be his salary, where I think he currently earns around 200 or 250,000 pounds a week. Uh, so that could be a stumbling block. I don't think Gakpo earns anything near that sort of bracket there. So if he was to join, he would be expected to be first choice, and it's a flip of a coin in terms of who you start between Gakpo and Nico Williams. I just feel like the way Liverpool move in terms of signing players, we don't really sign players on huge salaries unless they are a Thiago Alcantara or someone of that level. Um, so question marks with regards to that, but in terms of ability, I think he would fit the bill. Very young, I think he's 22 years of age. So maybe one to watch, but I'm not 100% sure if he is a realistic target for us. Next one, and a name that you're all familiar with is Anthony Gordon, who was very strongly linked last year with a potential move to Liverpool. With rumors suggesting that Luis Diaz was going to part ways and Anthony Gordon was going to be made as his replacement. I'm still not on that boat. I don't think he is to Luis Diaz's level, in my opinion. In terms of this season, 34 games played, 9 goals, 7 assists, so not bad. Similar stats to Nico Williams, to be honest with you. I think Nico Williams has played 5 more games in comparison to Gordon. But he's not been that great this year, and I'm sure Newcastle fans will vouch for that and agree with me. He's been quite inconsistent. He has played in different roles, just to back him up a little bit. Predominantly played left wing last season. This season, he played more so on the right hand side. Um, so hasn't really cemented sort of a place in the team. He's been rotated or moved around the pitch on occasion. So for me, I think he'd cost a lot. He wouldn't be a bad addition to the squad, but he'd probably, well, he wouldn't be him. His club would probably demand a fee around 80 million pounds, which for me is, yeah, out of bounds. So not an option for me, in my opinion. Another player who's a very interesting profile is Jamie Gittins. Now he is an English winger that plays for Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga. This season, in 40 games, he has scored 11 goals and 4 assists. His contract expires in 2028, so you'd expect to pay a decent amount of money for him. And with Dortmund's history, whenever they acquire a young player like a Sancho or Bellingham, they normally demand a big transfer fee um, to part ways. So he's currently valued at 80 million pounds, but I have heard that he has a release clause of 60 to 65 million pounds. If Dortmund do not qualify for Champions League football, they're currently eighth in the Bundesliga, so it looks like they might not be able to qualify. So this is definitely one to watch. Of course, it's English, so I think he's currently 20 years of age, so he should be regarded as homegrown. I'm not entirely sure, but definitely one to watch, as I feel like he could be an interesting option for Liverpool this summer. Now we all know this player, Rafael Leao. For me, this is a bit of a dream signings. With each category, I do place one player that I feel like is a bit unrealistic, but I just put the energy out there, and maybe somehow, we're linked to these players. But Rafael Leao, if I was to choose anything, he would be one of my first choices. I feel like he's a fantastic player. This season, he's played 40 games, 10 goals, 9 assists. But I don't think he would be interested in a move to the Premier League. I've watched an interview with him a couple of years ago where he's mentioned that he wouldn't move to a country that is not sunny or doesn't offer that lifestyle in terms of good weather and all that sort of stuff. So coming to England definitely will not appeal to him. If he was to part ways, maybe a move in La Liga, where obviously the sun is always shining there, would be on the cards. So with a lot of these players, it's not always about money. It's about what lifestyle they can have for themselves and their families. So I don't feel like this is a realistic option for us. But even saying that out loud, I feel like he would um, request for a huge sort of salary, which I'm not sure FSG will be willing to do. And also, AC Milan would want a decent amount of money for him as well. So, no realistic option for me. Probably a dream signing, if I'm being honest with you guys. But I thought I'd mention him nonetheless. Another player who's a very interesting profile is Osana Diao. Now, a player that was very strongly linked with Brentford last season. Last season, he was playing for Real Betis, predominantly played on the left wing, but since his move to Como, the Italian side, he's pretty much playing on the right side. So, a player that is multifunctional, can play on the left, can play on the right very, very comfortably. This season, since he's joined the Serie A team, he's played 11 games, 5 goals, no assists. So with him just moving to Como in January, I feel like it's a very unlikely move to take place so soon this summer. But maybe something on the cards in the future if he continues to increase his stock, because he's definitely making waves in Serie A right now. So definitely a player to watch out for in the future. A player that we're all familiar with is Leroy Sane, 29 years of age. He will be available on a free transfer, I believe. This season, his stats are 35 appearances, 9 goals, 4 assists. Is this a realistic option? It could be, but I think in terms of his profile, in terms of his age, I'm not sure if FSG would want to acquire a player at this stage of his career. But you never know. He's Premiership proven. Of course, used to play for Man City. Has been inconsistent in the last couple of years for Bayern Munich. Can play on the left, can play on the right, can even play as a number 10 if required. So he would be a good option. I just don't know if this is one that's on the cards for Liverpool this summer. Another player that has been creating waves in Serie A, and that is Kenan Yildiz, the Turkish international player, very highly regarded, great dribbling ability, great finisher as well. He was a player that I said to watch out for in the Euros last year for Turkey, so definitely a player that I've been familiar with. This season, he's only played 41 games, 6 goals, 4 assists, only 19 years of age, so very young, still a bit raw. I feel like could really develop into a top player. However, I think he would command a big transfer fee. So if Liverpool are seriously interested in a player, they probably have to shell out a big, about 50 or so million pounds, in my opinion. So is that realistic? Potentially, but I do feel like with Liverpool, if they were to acquire a left winger, it would be on the basis that Luis Diaz is leaving. So I don't see any of these players replacing Gakpo in the lineup. I think they would be understudy or backup for Gakpo. So they'll have to buy their time before they can really start pushing for a first team place. A player like Kenan Yildiz will fit the bill, young and up and coming, and can have an instant impact. I'm not just saying because he's young that he should be on the bench. He won't have that pressure to have an instant impact right away. So for him, he can buy this time, get accustomed to the way we play, get accustomed to the league, and he can definitely showcase his talent going forward. So I think that would be the profile that Liverpool should be going into. Another player that's quite interesting is Ruben Vargas, the Swiss international who you may remember scored a spectacular goal in the Euros last year against Italy. This season, he's only played 9 games for Sevilla, 1 goal and 1 assist. That's due to him just recently moving in January. So, like I mentioned for Asana Diao, very unlikely that Vargas moves on this summer. Another player, Alex Baena, very interesting profile to be fair. Um, this season, he's played 26 games, 6 goals, 7 assists. From what I've seen of him, he's not a out and out left winger. Now, don't quote me on this in terms of the comparison that I'm about to give, but he's kind of like a Coutinho where he's played at a left wing position, but he's not the type of player that goes down the byline and takes the player on one on one. He's more of a creative outlet from that wing position. So I feel like if he was to join Liverpool and played on the left wing, that is what he would bring to the table. I feel like he'd be more suited in our system playing as an advanced midfielder, same role as Szoboszlai, where his final ball is exquisite. Like the amount of free balls I've seen him produced uh, in the videos that I've seen of him, he's definitely got a knack for that sort of thing. So for me, very interesting player. Uh, I feel like he could be a realistic target. I feel like there's rumors circling that he could be leaving in the summer. So definitely want to watch. If Liverpool were to pursue him, I see him playing, more as a number 10 and covering for that left wing position, if required. So definitely want to watch. Next player, young up and coming player in Malik Fofana. This season, he's only 18 years of age, but has been predominantly involved. Played 35 games, 10 goals, 5 assists. Now, if Liverpool do have serious interest in the player, we definitely need to go in and make sure we get his signature because there was a young player a couple of years ago that I mentioned on the podcast that I feel like maybe Liverpool should have pursued, and he goes by the name of Barcola, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, plays for PSG now. Um, so if he's of that similar ilk, which I do think he does have that sort of traits, my only concern would be that he's still quite raw, and I feel like he's a bit lightweight, so he might struggle with the physicality of the Premier League. But if he came into a team like Liverpool, he wouldn't be expected to be a starter right away. He can learn the trade and evolve in due course. So a profile that'd be very interesting for Liverpool, and I feel like it could be one that we have to keep an eye on because I don't expect Liverpool to go for like a Rafael or like a ready-made left winger. We've already got Gakpo in the team, so we need someone that's an understudy or someone that can learn their trade and slowly become a top player or a prominent figure in the first team. So Malik Fofana for me would definitely tick that box. So definitely one to watch. Now, if I was to choose one, I would go for Jamie Gittins. From what I've seen, he looks very interesting in terms of what he brings to the table. Very good in one-on-one duels. So he'd give us that option where he'll definitely take on the fullback, stretch the team, and provide crosses from the wing. So I feel like he could be an interesting profile. Another one would have been Malik Fofana, to be honest with you. That's the kind of profile I feel like Liverpool should be pursuing if they were to make a replacement for Luis Diaz. But feel free to drop a comment, let me know who you guys would want as a potential left wing candidate. And let's move on to right wingers. Now, the good news is that we're not looking for a Salah replacement. But having said that, I do feel like the club need to try and sign the next Mohamed Salah in terms of being his natural successor. So rather than wait for Salah's contract to end in 2 years' time, it would make more sense to sign that player this summer, let them learn off Mohamed Salah in terms of what he brings in training and on the pitch, but also off the field, where the way he carries himself. I feel like that's something that can really, rub off the youngsters in the squad, and I feel like it could definitely, almost become like a mentor to these players, where they can understand what it takes to be an elite player. So when you've got the likes of Van Dijk and Salah, who are serial winners and are known to be the best in their positions in world football, there is no sort of better teacher where you've got them in in the flesh. So I feel like signing that next player to be Salah's successor makes more sense to do it right now and then. So let's see how Liverpool. That is my point of view. I feel like that's the kind of player we should sign this summer. So I'll go through some of the potential targets. One is Tyler Diblin, who had a fantastic start for Southampton in the opening first half of the season. Second half, however, has slightly fizzled out. He's been in and out of the team, so not a regular in the Southampton lineup. Uh, so far this season, he's played 30 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, so not the highest of GA there. Very good in terms of what I've seen, especially when he played against us. I remember him nudging off Robertson with ease, so has great strength um, in terms of his dribbling and great sense of gravity as well. Still a young player, 18 years of age, I believe, so definitely has a lot of time to learn and understand the role. He can play as a number 10 as well, so that'll be another sort of a position that he can occupy in the team. For me, it would depend on the transfer fee. If it's something where we can acquire him for like 20 to 30 million, then it would be a good addition to the squad. But I feel like Southampton will try and get as much as possible and then probably want double that money, if I'm being honest with you. So for me, not the sort of the right amount. I feel that's too much for the player. Johan Bakayoko, a player that was heavily linked with us last summer, so no surprise that he's been linked again this summer. A player that's very sort of similar to Salah stylistically, where he's a left-footed right winger, loves to cut in and shoot from distance, so he's got that in his locker. This season, he's played 39 games, 10 goals, 3 assists. So for me, it would be a good option. I just don't know if he's the quality that we need in the squad right now. Of course, he'd be a backup to Salah. Um, but I have not seen too much of him this season, so I would still need to watch of him to understand if he is Premier League ready. Because there's certain players where I feel like they'll do well in certain leagues. I don't know if Bakayoko will have that same impact in the Premier League. So for me, there's question marks on him. And of course, in terms of his transfer fee as well, I think he'll be available for around 25, 30 million pounds, which is not too crazy. So could be an option. So definitely one to watch there. Takifuwa Kubo, a player that I'm sure we're all familiar with, former Real Madrid player who now plies his trade at Real Sociedad, sorry. This season, he's played 41 times, 7 goals with 3 assists, so 10 GA. They're not the highest of ratios. In terms of what he brings to the table, fantastic dribbler. Really quick, very nippy on the ball, has a decent shot on him. My concern would be that he's quite lightweight. And I don't feel like he will acclimatized to the intensity and physicality of the Premier League. So I don't think this would be a good option. I could be completely wrong, but from what I've seen, he does get uh, outstrengthed quite a lot on the pitch. So for me, not the right profile, but nonetheless, still a very talented player. Now, this guy, if you've seen him on previous shows, I've mentioned him before. Yeah, this is the guy for me right there. Ryan Cherky, who for me has been sensational this season. 35 appearances, 8 goals, and 18 assists. So yeah, that's levels right there. For me, can play that number 10 role very comfortably. Can play right wing. There will be some question marks in regards to his defensive duties, but I feel like at times, when you have a special talent like Cherky, you've got to build your team around a player like that rather than making him do the dirty work. So, look at players like I'm not comparing it to these players, by the way. So the players like Messi, Ronaldo, even Ozil, who I feel like is quite similar in terms of the way they play. Um, they weren't known to track back for their teams, but what you did know is that they always produced the 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 output at the other end. So that's more important, isn't it? So I feel like with a special talent like Turkey, it's one that we should definitely go all in because I believe he's available for around 20 to 25 million pounds due to the financial issues at Lyon right now. So for me, this is a no-brainer. But I don't know if he's an Arne Slot type of player. because of Arne Slot's teams, and if you look at his history, every player needs to put in a shift. So, you know, I feel like it's a low risk gamble, in my opinion. If he was to come and not deliver, we could, sell him on card. I feel like there will be suitors for him elsewhere. And also, as I mentioned earlier on, with regards to finding the right profile to learn off Salah, I think Turkey would be the best profile. If Turkey wants to be known as the best player in the world football, he's got the perfect mentor there in Salah who, he can learn off. They both got so similar backgrounds where they both speak Arabic, so both Muslims, so that can help in terms of, understanding the culture and also understanding how the other person lives their life. So when you've got someone with similar backgrounds, you can kind of understand them a bit better, and obviously the communication is there as well. And I just feel like he's such a big icon in the Arab world. I feel like Turkey would thrive off learning off Mohamed Salah and understand what it takes to be at his level. And if that's what he aspires to be, if he wants to build a legacy for himself, then he's got to make different strides. I.e., his diet probably needs to change and eat certain foods, because that's something that Mohamed Salah has mentioned over the years. And conduct himself a certain way. It has to be where he's football driven, and it's not about any other thing. So these factors will play a part in terms of how successful Turkey will be in the future. I really hope that Liverpool try to sign this summer. He's such a joy to watch. If you've not seen him in action, um, feel free to go over to YouTube and watch a couple compilations, because he's a special talent. He would be such a joy to watch. Um, so for me, I'd regard him as a dream signing, even though he shouldn't be a dream signing. He should be realistic for us. I just don't know if he fits the mold of being an Arne Slot player. So that's my only concern. But in terms of what he brings to the table, in terms of his talent, I feel like, yeah, he's definitely up there. So yeah, that's one where I'm, hoping and praying that, it becomes a reality this summer. Another player linked to the club is Anton Semenyo, the Ghanaian international, who of course plays for Bournemouth. Has had a good season so far, to be fair, and he's always performed well against us. This season, he's played 32 times, 9 goals, 6 assists. The only stumbling block is his transfer fee, as Bournemouth have apparently um, labelled him for £70 million. That's his price tag, apparently, which for me is way too much for a player that's pretty much going to be a backup for all of our forwards. So if that is the case, for me, that's not a realistic option at all. Now, next player, Brian and Mbeumo. Now, he's a very interesting profile for me, because when I look at right wingers, especially the ones that I mentioned today, they all offer something different. Where one winger like a Bakayoko is someone that, is pretty much very one-footed, but really attacks that byline with great pace and directness as well. You've got Ryan Cherky, who's a bit of a flair player, where he'll drift infield and be more of a creative spark, or maybe produces a shot out of nowhere and scores a wonder goal. That's the type of player he is. Uh, you've got Mbeumo here, who for me, you know, I'm not saying this very directly, but has a very similar way of playing as to in comparison to Mohamed Salah, where they're both very direct, but they're goal scorers. So I see Mbeumo more as an inside forward rather than an out and out right winger. So I feel like he would be a perfect backup for Mohamed Salah, where if Salah's not on the team, you've got a player like Mbeumo who could come in and pretty much do the same kind of job that Salah does. He can also play as a striker. He's got great speed, great strength on and off the ball. So I feel like he would be a very smart signing for Liverpool. And I feel like at his stage of his career, when he's around 24, 25, it would be the right move for him to join a big club and test his ability, because that is something that I'm sure he aspires to do. In terms of this season, he's played 33 games, 15 goals in all competitions, and 6 assists. So he's had a fantastic season so far. If Liverpool were to sign a sort of a like for like backup, Mboma would be in there for me as well. Obviously, my dream signing would be Ryan Cherky in terms of what he brings to the table. But if I'm being very calculated and finding someone who offers similar traits to Salah, I think it could be Mboma. He's not the fancy name that I'm sure a lot of us would be expecting, but I feel like he'd be efficient on the ball and he'd get the goals that we need in the team as well. So for me, he could be an option this summer. Mohamed Kudus, a player that I have rated since his Ajax days. This season, he's not had the impact that I think many of us expected. He's played 27 times, 3 goals, 2 assists, but that might be due to the fact that he's played in a left wing position, which you're thinking left footed, that should be natural to him. It's not really his natural game. He normally plays on the right hand side or plays as a number 10, even up top. I've seen him play as a number 9 for Ajax as well. So I feel like that is where his strengths are, where he drives with the ball, cuts in, and then takes his first time shot with his left foot playing on the left hand side. He's an out and out winger. So his role is basically to attack that byline and then hit left footed crosses into the middle of the box. So not really playing to his strengths there this season. Um, and I feel like he's got a release clause of £85 million, which for me is crazy. So for me, unfortunately, as much as I like the player, not a realistic option for us this summer. Another player that maybe slightly out of the box is Francisco Conceição, of course, the son of Sergio Conceição, who is now the AC Milan manager. Not having the best of times there, but yeah, that is his current role right now. In terms of his performance this season, Conceição has played 30 times, 5 goals, 5 assists. Different profiles from Mohamed Salah, where he's more of an out-and-out winger, uh, but very talented, a very interesting profile. Um, for me, there's better options out there, but I do feel like he's a player that, you know, could do well in this team. I just feel like maybe there's better options. So for me, not high on my pecking order, but definitely worth a shout. Now you're probably thinking, why have I got Jeremy Frimpong um, on this show? This is about attackers. Well, the reason I've got him on this show is because I feel like his best position is actually right wing. I know he plays as a fullback or has played as fullback in his career when he was at Celtic and eventually moved on to Bayer Leverkusen. But in this day and age, he pretty much plays as a right winger. For Leverkusen, plays as a right wing back. For the Netherlands, I recently did a watch along of Netherlands versus Spain, and he played as a right winger, out and out right winger. So no defensive duties from him. So I feel like he could be a very interesting option for that right wing. Different to Salah, of course, he's a right-footed player, out and out winger. But what he brings to the table is raw pace, something that we have probably lacked in our team. And I feel like there's been games where I don't feel like we've actually attacked the fullback enough. So if you had a player like Frimpong, he will certainly do that all day long. And of course, he brings versatility. He can play right wing. He can also play right back. If you want to play with back three, he can play a wing back position as well. So he brings a lot of options for us in terms of different systems that Arne Slot might want to deploy during the course of next season. So for me, he'd be a very, very interesting profile. I believe he's available for £35 million. I think that's his release clause. So definitely something that Liverpool needs to look into because I feel like that's very cheap in this day and age. And I feel like because he's so versatile, he'd be a fantastic asset from us, from the bench. So for me, definitely a player that we need to look into. And the final player for the right wing position is Mohamed Ali Cho. So he's a player that's actually from the UK. He's homegrown. So if we were to sign him, he ticks that quota there. This season for his club, which is Nice in League R, he has played 30 times, 5 goals, 4 assists, left footed, right winger. So very quick, very skillful on the ball. Interesting player. He's been linked with us, so it's not a player that I just randomly brought up. He has been linked with us in the past, so definitely one to look out for in terms of what he brings to the table. I don't know if he's the right profile for us. I think we should probably look at different options, especially the ones that I mentioned earlier on. So for me, not the right profile, or probably not right profile. I think he fits the bill, but I think there's probably better players that could be acquired this summer. Now, in terms of my right wing candidates, in terms of who I would like the club to sign, yes, I've kind of cheated. I've got two players there, but I can also explain in terms of why. Turkey for me would be that dream signing in terms of what he brings from a technical point of view. But I'm not quite so sure if he fits the philosophy of Arne Slot and Frimpong. I've kind of cheated a little bit because yes, he is a right winger, but he's also an option for us at right back. So that's why I've had to present two options there. Um, it could be a thing where we sign both. That's not really something that's out of bounds. You know, Cherki can come in and be regarded as a backup for Salah, but can also challenge for that number 10 role, especially if you believe the rumors that Harvey Elliott could possibly leave in the summer as well. So he would be a fantastic like for like replacement for Harvey Elliott, but can also deputise in that right wing position. So he'll bring that versatility to the team. But so can Frimpong. Frimpong can be a good option for us on that right hand side, especially if we need pace on that byline, or he can play in the right back position. So for me, these are the two profiles that we should be looking at. I'm hoping and praying that we get one of the two. Two out of two would be amazing, but let's see what the future holds for Liverpool. And let's move on to the next one. Now, this one, it's not well. I say not a lot of options to analyze. I've got 15 strikers listed, so yeah, we've got a lot to go through, but there's no real standout sort of players that I feel like, oh, he's the guy. Because normally, a certain position when you see them play, you're like, you know what? I can see him being in the Liverpool shirt and really succeeding. There's a lot of players I'm not quite so sure, but we can discuss that right now. So let's go to the first one. Of course, who's surprising? Who I've got there? Alexander Isak. Now, this player, of course, has been sensational for Newcastle this season. In terms of his current stats, 33 appearances, 23 goals, 5 assists. Now, he's a proper gunman. Let's be honest. And, you've seen him play. He scored against us a couple of times this season. Unfortunately, he's just not a realistic option. As much as I would love to see him in a Liverpool shirt, it's just not going to happen. Newcastle won earlier on today, beating Crystal Palace 5-0. So they've moved up to third. So they're in very strong contention of finishing in the top four. And if they do manage to do that, he's definitely not moving. Forget Liverpool, he's not moving elsewhere because he'll get what he wants. He's just won silverware for the club. It's the first time they've won a trophy in 70 odd years. And now they're going to play Champions League football where he's going to be the main man. I don't think he'd want to move unless, a crazy offer comes for him where, you know, Newcastle are blown away by the transfer bid and he's getting double the salary or something to that nature. So something, out of the ordinary would definitely sway him to leave Newcastle. But I just don't think it's a realistic option. Even if Newcastle weren't able to qualify for Champions League football and were willing to part ways with the player, they would command at least £100 million. And that's me being very modest there. I think they'd want around 120 to £130 million, which some Liverpool fans will say, look, we can, if we sell this player, that player, we can generate the money. I just don't see that happening. We could generate the money from player sales, but we've got other areas to cover as well, and we've got to find replacement for those players at some point as well. So for me, as much as I would love to see a signing, it's just not a realistic option. So yeah, we'll see. There are strong rumors still suggesting that we will go for him in the summer. So only time will tell if there's any truth to those stories. Another dream signing, I guess, guys, is Julian Alvarez. Of course, former Man City player. This season, 44 appearances, 23 goals, 5 assists. I think he's probably the perfect Arne Slot striker. Can play as the number 9, can play as the number 10, can even play on the wings with complete ease. Presses from the front really, really well, and he's a great finisher. He's probably what we want from Jota, but of course Jota is not available all the time. I think he's got more to his game than Jota. I feel like finishing wise, they're probably not that dissimilar, but in terms of his all round game, I feel like Alvarez better IQ, uh, has great movement. He knows when to, hold the ball and release the ball. I feel like he's a really special player, and He's a player that I would love for us to sign, but just doesn't seem realistic for a few reasons, to be fair. One, of course, he only just joined a year ago. I think they paid around 85 million pounds. So, you're going to have to increase that bit to at least 100 million pounds if you want him to prize away. But also, one of the reasons that he left was um, for personal reasons, where I think his wife wasn't happy to live in England. I think with regards to weather and all that sort of stuff. So I don't think they'd want to move back to England. If that is true, because there's things that I've read, um, which is a shame because his best mate actually plays for us, and that is Alexis McAllister. So you never know. But yeah, unrealistic. But if I was to pick, the perfect Arsenal striker, I think he fits the bill because a lot of us fans were still quite unsure in terms of what Arne Slot wants. Does he want a false nine, or does he want an out and out gunman? He's literally a 9.5. He's a bit of both, so he fits the bill in every shape or form. So unfortunately, yeah, not a realistic option. As perfect as he is, it's not going to happen. Another player is Cunha, who's had a fantastic season for Wolves this season. He's played 29 times, 15 goals, 4 assists. In terms of what he brings to the table, he's more of a number 10, in my opinion. He can play on the left hand side, but he's got great ability on the ball, great finisher, great eye in terms of his passing. Um, if you were to acquire him, I wouldn't be too disappointed, but I don't think it can just be Cunha. It'll have to be another striker because I don't think we could rely on Cunha being the guy that scores the goals for us. He'll be part of a duo where we've got another player, and he's either his backup or Cunha plays in the same team alongside that number 9. Um, I think his transfer fee, I think he's available for around 60 odd million, so it's quite a big price to be fair. Um, I don't think he's a bad player. I do like him. I do rate him. I just don't know if he's the one for us. That's how I'm looking at it. But I do rate the player. Another one is Benjamin Sesko. Now I know a lot of fans have a split opinion on the player. This season he's played 36 times, 17 goals, 6 assists, which is not a bad ratio at all, to be brutally honest with you guys. But whenever I've seen him play, whether that's for club um, level or international level, he's never moved me. I feel like maybe I jinxed him. I'm not too sure, but whenever I've seen him play, I feel like he looks so average, and I do question the hype sometimes. But why is he so hyped up? Because I know at his previous club in Salzburg, he was the guy that replaced Haaland in the team. So maybe they thought he was the baby Haaland or the next Haaland or something of that nature. I don't think he's that type of player. To be fair, he's very raw. Um, I if we were to sign him, I wouldn't be over pleased. I find it quite an underwhelming signing. Don't get me wrong, I will give him my full backing support, but he's not the player that I would look out for. So for me, no, that's not the player that fits the bill to lead the line for Liverpool next summer, or should I say next season. Another player that is not many of us first choice or a cup of tea is Jonathan David. The Canadian striker is available on a free transfer, so that is a selling point to acquire his services. This season, he's played 41 games, 23 goals, 10 assists. So not bad ratio, 33 GA in 41 games. Um, he's a player that he's not going to get you off your seat, number one, but he is a clinical finisher. He's a player that can drop deep as well and has a good sort of percentage in terms of his passing and holding off the ball. And that part of his game, he does fit the bill. I feel like he's more suited for a team like Tottenham, where when they had Harry Kane, he would do that kind of job. So he's more of a like for like player in regards to that. Um, you can't rule this out, which he's not my cup of tea. If I'm being honest, I'll say it out loud. He's not my cup of tea. I feel like he could be an option for us. And the reason I say that is because there's a possibility that we might sign two strikers this summer. And the strikers that we're linked with, they seem to be up and coming young strikers that haven't really hit that level yet. So if we were to sign two, you can't, in my opinion, you can't sign two young strikers. That doesn't really bode well because you've got two unfinished strikers articles, no, strikers, unfinished articles there where they're still learning their trade and they still haven't, lived up to their potential. So you'd rather have where it's a young striker plus maybe Jota as backup, or it's a young striker plus a Jonathan David who, they'll both be fighting for that starting spot. So no one's guaranteed to start for the team. But at least with Jonathan David, he's got a bit more experience. He's 25, 26 years of age. So he can do a shift. And if the other young striker, has trained really hard and has surpassed everyone's expectations and becomes that main guy in the team that we sort of envisioned, then having a Jonathan David as a backup is not a bad option as well. So I feel like this could be a realistic option. I know it's not going to appease a lot of fans, but I do feel like maybe there's something with this rumor that he could be a potential candidate for us to sign next summer. But it also depends on the outgoings at the club. If we were to sell more than one or two strikers, then he'd be an option. If it's just one striker, then I don't see him being the replacement for that striker. So, uh, but yeah, we can discuss that later on in the show. Another player that's been linked is Hugo Ekitike, a player that I do like the look of. There's been comparisons of him being a young Alexander Isak from his Sociedad days, and I kind of do see the similarities. Both players are very tall and lanky, but great first touch for their stature. Uh, Very sort of quick on and off the ball. Uh, Decent finishes as well. Uh, so I feel like we've got a player that's still quite raw, but is probably at that level where playing for a better team and better players, he can really hit that new level sooner than expected. So he's for me a very serious option for Liverpool this summer. This season he's played 39 games, 19 goals, 8 assists. Um, but if you believe the rumors, apparently Frankfurt have set a price tag of £85 million for the young striker there. They're not going to get anything to that nature. I think they're just trying to hold off any further interest or making sure that if there is any interest from other clubs that they are ready to spend big. Um, I think we can probably get him for around 50, 60 million mark, in my opinion, which seems a bit high. But I feel like he's got better potential, better, or should I say, a higher ceiling than a Sesko, who I mentioned earlier on, who's probably available for a similar range as well. Um, he's a player that I really like. So definitely one that I would be pleased if we did target, but at the same time, I'd want us to sign an experienced attacker with him, or one of our current strikers remains in the team. So I feel like there can't be too many changes. It can't be four in, four out, and then two in. Like it doesn't make sense. So it does depend in terms of the outgoings and incomings at the club. But I think Ekitike could be an option for us this summer. Now, in terms of numbers, this guy is definitely um, breaking records and matching Salah when it comes to those sort of numbers. And that is Gyökeres, the Swedish striker, of course, plays for Sporting at 41 appearances, 40 goals, and 10 assists, which is absolutely insane. 25 appearances and 28 goals in the league this season. So in terms of numbers, he's got the best ratio out of all the strikers I mentioned today. I just don't know if that form in the Portuguese league will transition into the Premier League. That's my only concern. I don't know if there's a guarantee with regards to that. So, look, if we were to sign him, I wouldn't be disappointed. But there's a part of me that doesn't feel like he would be the right fit for us. I just not too sure. He's not completely won me over in terms of me having him as my number one candidate. but in terms of what he brings to the table, um, yeah, very sort of quick on the ball, presses really well. Kind of similar to Núñez, but he brings chaos when he plays. Um, I would question his sort of even though he plays for commentary, so he's played English football, um, not at the Premier League, but he's played Championship level. The physicality of the Premier League, is he able to hack it? Still question marks regards to that. So, um, but he still is a viable option because I believe he's available for around 50 to 60 million pounds. So, if a striker like that is available in the market, you can't ignore it. You might have to just take a punt and take it from there. So, wouldn't be my first choice, but I wouldn't be disappointed if he was to be signed. I do feel like he's a top striker. I just don't know if he can hit the heights that Liverpool fans will want from their striker. So question mark. But I do like the player. To be fair, another player that I like is Osimhen. The player currently on loan at Galatasaray has played 30 appearances this season, 26 goals, 5 assists. Apparently, rumors circulating that he's available for 60 million pounds. If that is true, similar fee to Gyökeres there. I think we should be all over it. Osimhen for me offers something different to Gyökeres, where I feel like of course, he's taller in stature, but he's more physical um, in terms of holding off the ball and is able to handle being up against two centre backs, for example. So um, Osimhen would be a fantastic addition to our squad. I just don't know if it's realistic, and I don't know if those rumors are true of him being available for 60 million. But yeah, definitely an option for us in the summer if the rumors are to be true. We were slightly out of the box. Lautaro Martinez. I don't know why no one's been linked to him because for me, such a phenomenal striker. 39 appearances, 27. Sorry, 39 appearances, 18 goals, 6 assists. So that's 24 goals and assists this season. Scored an outrageous goal against Bayern Munich last week with the outside his boot. Such a lethal finisher. 27 years of age, so he's on the verge of reaching his peak. So I do feel like this is a player that we should be targeting. Whether he wants to move to the Premier League is another question. But he's someone that I would want us to target. I'm not sure why, you know, we haven't. Maybe there's an indication that he doesn't want a move in the Premier League. Um, but that's the kind of player I like. Really talented, great finisher. Has played with a strike partner, so there will be question marks in terms of can he lead the line on his own. But with the way Liverpool play with Szoboszlai, you know, when we're attacking, our shape isn't always a 4-2-3. We're actually playing a 4-2-4. So you've got Szoboszlai alongside Lautaro Martinez if he was in our team. So that will help in terms of how he adapts and how he can play his game within the Liverpool setup. So for me, he'd be a fantastic option, but I have to probably put him in the dream signing category as well because it doesn't seem like it's a realistic option. A player that's been linked with a move to Premier League for a number of years now, and that is Dusan Vlahovic. His stats this year: 34 appearances, 14 goals, 2 assists. Yeah, in terms of stats, 16 GA in 34 games. He's been strongly linked to a move to Manchester United today. I read earlier on, so maybe a move on the cards. Uh, is directed towards the Premier League. Maybe not Liverpool. I don't know. I feel like there was like 2 3 years ago. I feel like I really wanted him because I feel like he was on that verge, but it hasn't really hit the heights that I think a lot of us fans wanted. Maybe just due to injuries and the team that he's currently playing for. So interesting profile. Still a good striker, but I'd probably look elsewhere. As I feel like there are probably better options in Europe. Harry Kane, not who's surprised in terms of who he is. Um, Recently linked to us. And apparently he's got a release clause of £50 million, which yeah, I'd take that all day long. I don't know what to make of this one. I would actually accept the deal if that is true that he's got 50 million release clause and he'd be willing to move back to England. Yeah, Liverpool should be all over that. But I don't know. I don't know if there's any truth to it. In terms of his stats, he's always going to hit the big numbers. 37 appearances, 32 goals, 11 assists. Yeah, Harry Kane is still hitting those big numbers. I would still sign him. And I know he might not be an FSG signing because of his age, but can you imagine Salah and Harry Kane in the team? Yeah, that'd be insane. So I still take it. I feel like he'd still have an impact in our team. Um, but I don't know if there's any truth. I don't think Bayern Munich would want to part ways with the player. Marcus Thuram, who has been linked to Liverpool in recent weeks, his stats for the season: 38 appearances, 16 goals, 4 assists, which is not too bad. Of course, he's formed a formidable partnership with Lautaro Martinez in the Inter Milan team. A good player. I just don't feel like he's efficient on the ball in terms of his finishing. So I don't feel like he'll get us regular goals. And I think that's what we're lacking in our team. We don't have that killer um, finisher or that someone that has a killer instinct in front of goal who scores 20, 30 goals per season. I feel like that's the type of player we're targeting. So good player. I just don't know if he will fit that bill into what we need going forward. Penda, a player that has been scoring the goals in the Bundesliga for Red Bull Leipzig this season. His stats are 36 games, 12 goals, 8 assists, which is 20, GA in 36 appearances. Decent player. I just don't know if he's Liverpool quality because he's a good finisher in front of the box. He's pretty much like a fox in the box type of player, but I just don't think he offers anything else. And I feel like in an Arne Slot team, you need to still have a good sort of all round game where you're able to lay off the ball or you know attack the channels if required because our attackers were quite fluid in terms of how we play. He's not going to always be in the central position, so he's more of a fox in the box, and I don't feel like he will suit the way we play. If I'm being honest, um, but yeah, in terms of what he brings to the table, good player. I just don't think he's Liverpool quality, in my honest opinion. Now, a name that will be unknown to some, and that is Mika Birev. Now, he is a player that was in the rankings, or should I say, in the academy at Arsenal. So, um, recently joined Monaco in January, and his stats so far: 9 games, 11 goals, 2 assists. So yeah, very interesting player in terms of what he's produced so far this season. He's homegrown, so that's another tick box there. I just don't think he'll move in the summer, but I can see him being targeted for a return in the Premier League, maybe in a year or so, if he continues this sort of form uh, into next season. So it's a player that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on. I wasn't too familiar with him before, but because he's had such a great purple patch, he's definitely been making the waves in League One. So definitely one that I'll be keeping an eye on and see how he develops at Monaco. And the next player is Liam Delap, um, a player that, when he was linked to Liverpool, I thought, hmm, it's a bit underwhelming. Not really impressed with that. But when I was seeing him play, I'm thinking he's impressive, but is he going to replicate that at a big club like Liverpool? Still question marks with regards to that. But I do feel like he does have the ability to be a top striker. This season, 31 appearances, 10 goals, 2 assists. The good thing about Liam Delap is that he has a release clause of £30 million, which is peanuts in this day and age. Strongly linked to a move to Chelsea and Manchester United. Good, good would be a good option for us. I just wouldn't sign him as our main number 9. It has to be him and someone else that's a bit more experienced. So let's say in the Dreamland we got Isak and Liam Delap, I'd be happy with that. But it has to be a top striker and Liam Delap rather than just being Liam Delap as the guy that's going to, spearhead our front line because don't feel like he's at the stage to do that. Um, and I feel like there's other players that are of his sort of similar age group or similar ilk that have better ability currently and have a higher ceiling as well. So money wise, 30 million is not a lot. I can actually see him joining a club like Chelsea. To be fair, I feel like it's got like a Chelsea signing written all over it. So, um, so let's see where he um, ends up in the summer. Um, now, dream candidates, no surprise. I mentioned them earlier in the show. Isak and Alvarez, and I'll probably add Lautaro Martinez to that one. Yeah, just out of our financial range, unfortunately, not realistic options for Liverpool Football Club. Realistic target for me, if I was to choose out of all the options that I presented, I would go for Ekitike. I feel like he's got a very high ceiling. Um, Plays to a similar ilk of Isak. So I feel like if you can't get Isak, maybe get someone that, you know, is like the next big thing or has similar traits to the striker. And I feel like Ekitike um, fits that bill. So he's a player that I would like the club to pursue in the summer. So he would replace um, this fella here, Darwin Núñez. He would be a direct replacement for Darwin Núñez. And I feel like he'd bring more calmness and composure in front of goal. Um, he's very good at attacking the channels as well. So I feel like he could do really well in this Liverpool team. So with Núñez looking like the most likely player to depart at this club this summer, there are two other players that I feel like could be sold as well. So Jota, his future for me is still a bit uncertain, as well as Diaz due to his contractual situation as well. So these two players could vacate, and Chiesa, I haven't even mentioned it. Chiesa could also be a player that ends up leaving. He's got a lot of interest in Serie A, so that's another option. So in terms of potential replacements, Jonathan David would make more sense to replace Diogo Jota, just because I feel like it saves money, and then you've got an experienced attacker off the bench, and a player like Jamie Gittins or a Malik Fofana, who I mentioned earlier on, that young and up and coming left winger, would be a great player to have on the bench. As an understudy for Gakpo, of course, Gittins would probably command a bigger transfer fee around £60 million. Malik Fofana would be available first, so that'd probably be a better option. But with Gittins being English and ticks that homegrown box as well. I've mentioned it a few times homegrown, so you probably think, why do I keep on banging on about it? We've got a lot of players that could be departing that are currently homegrown, so we need to somehow fill in the gaps and try and meet the quota for next summer. So that's why it could be a factor, not a huge factor, but it could be a factor in terms of who we recruit next summer. My verdict is that I think Ekitike will be the player that we sign to replace Darwin Núñez. I have a feeling that Diaz stays uh, for another season. Whether he signs a new contract or not, that's another debate. But I think he will be in the team next season. I think Jota will stay as well. I know Arne Slot is a big fan of Jota. I think with Jota, the only concern is his sort of availability, unfortunately. But with a young striker like Ekitike, it would be a risk to get rid of Jota and Diaz and expect him to produce wonders right away. He will, need to take time to get used to the way we play. So I feel like having a settled crop of attackers and only bringing in one will make more sense, in my opinion. And then Frimpong could be an option for us for that right hand side that can also cover the right back position. So kind of cheated here. I've got a player that's going to cover two positions, but would be a viable option for that right wing position. So that's my analysis of attackers and potential targets. Feel free to drop a comment and let me know what you guys think. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Philip. Thank you to Chibuke. And thank you to Uncle Roz. Appreciate your comments as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.